The first time I realized my family didn't really see me was at dinner. My mother slammed her fork onto the table, the sharp clatter echoing like a verdict I hadn't been prepared for. "You have 24 hours to pack your things and get out," she shouted. "This apartment now belongs to your brother." My father didn't even glance up from his plate. His nod was almost casual, like this was routine, like he hadn't just erased my existence. And my brother Brandon, living in New York, barely aware of the city, of the building, of the penthouse, he was suddenly handed everything, as though he'd earned it by merely existing. I'm Kelsey, 29, an interior designer. This penthouse in Chicago, Illinois, where I had lived my entire adult life, had been my sanctuary. Every wall, every custom shelf, every painstakingly chosen appliance carried my sweat, my skill, my late nights. I had poured years of my life into this home, believing it would be my safe harbor, my anchor in the city I loved. Now that belief shattered in a single brutal sentence. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask why. I simply nodded, stood, and walked to my room. The shock didn't break me, it crystallized into something sharp, something cold and precise. I opened my laptop, the screen casting a blue glow that felt more like a spotlight than illumination. I pulled up my private spreadsheet, my secret ledger that nobody had ever seen. Cook County property tax, $4,200. Click. Cancel payment. Penthouse association fees, $2,800. Click. Cancel. Shared elevator maintenance fund, $500. Click. Cancel. Building insurance premium. Click. 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 Every cancellation felt like a chain falling away. This home, my home, wasn't just a house, it was a burden. A burden I had carried alone for 5 years, absorbing my parents' neglect, their financial irresponsibility, their entitlement. And now they thought they could just sweep me aside. I picked up my phone and called Elite White Glove Movers. My voice was level, calm, precise. "I need an emergency move for tomorrow morning. Full team, specialty equipment. Sub-Zero fridge, Wolf range, custom built-ins, everything." The man hesitated. "That's a lot, ma'am. I'm paying the full emergency rate. Be there at 8 a.m. sharp." I hung up, and for a moment, the apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. They thought I was a guest. They had forgotten I was the one who had saved this place from ruin, who had turned it from a liability into a multi-million-dollar asset with my own hands. And now I was going to take every last stone with me. 5 years ago, this penthouse was on the brink. My parents had ignored taxes, fees, and insurance, and the building had sent a final notice, $50,000 owed. My father sat silently at the kitchen table. My mother panicked, mumbling about humiliation and downsizing. And I, fresh in my career, refused to watch the place collapse. I drained my savings, worked 18-hour days, managed clients, and poured $150,000 into rescuing the apartment. I didn't just pay bills, I rebuilt it. I redesigned kitchens, bathrooms, shelves. I sourced marble countertops at half the price through industry connections, procured Sub-Zero appliances, custom vanities, Wolf ranges. I turned neglect into perfection. But for all that effort, all that skill, all that sweat, my family saw none of it. They saw only the seat warmer, the invisible girl who would quietly absorb responsibility while the golden child collected the glory. And now they wanted to erase me. The movers arrived at 8 a.m., just as I had arranged. 6 professionals moving blankets, dollies, tools, precision. Sub-Zero fridge? Loaded. Wolf range? Gone. Custom shelves? Carefully dismantled. Every piece of my labor, every ounce of my sacrifice was being transferred out of their reach, my reach. Then my phone buzzed. My mother. "Your father told me what you said. I cannot believe how petty and childish you are being. We let you live here and this is your repayment? Stealing." I didn't reply. I watched the movers work, deliberate and methodical, moving what had been mine all along. Then my brother called. Brandon, smooth and smug, laughing down the line, trying to minimize the devastation I was orchestrating. "Taking what's yours? Cute. Mom and Dad are just trying to be nice. You're a designer, not an executive. This is for the family brand. You were just keeping the seat warm." Keeping the seat warm. I heard those words and they cut through the years. Every invisible sacrifice, every sleepless night, Every dollar I had quietly poured into saving this penthouse, it all crystallized in that one phrase. I wasn't seen. I wasn't appreciated. I was invisible. But that cold clarity hardened into resolve. I was done being their pedestal. Done being the utility, the silent supporter, the invisible one. I picked up my phone and called Chloe, my best friend, my confidant, now my legal ally. "Kelsey, what's wrong?" she asked. "I need a lawyer," I said, my voice steady. "Family property fraud, eviction. I need to stop them." Chloe's voice sharpened. "Who owns it now?" "My parents, I think," I said. "Give me your Aunt Patricia's full name and date of death," she instructed. Minutes later, she called back. "They don't own it. Patricia created an irrevocable trust. You are the sole beneficiary. The property transfers to you on your 30th birthday. In 4 months. For months." I sank into the hardwood floor, the enormity of it dawning on me. They had tried to steal what wasn't theirs, trying to cash out before I could claim it. Fraud. Felony. My patience, my years of silent suffering, had now met the perfect shield. The law, the foresight of a family member who had seen my worth when no one else did. And that's when I knew the reckoning had begun. I wasn't just fighting for a home. I was fighting for every year of invisibility, every sleepless night, every sacrifice that had gone unnoticed. I wasn't a pedestal anymore. I was a storm about to hit. The penthouse, my home, my labor, my sanctuary, it was about to become my weapon. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Comment below if you've ever been overlooked in your own family. And if this story is gripping you, give it a like, it really helps the channel. The morning after the movers left, the penthouse was a ghost. Bare hardwood floors reflected the pale winter light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Every trace of my life here, my furniture, my appliances, my carefully curated decor was gone. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt an unfamiliar calm. I hadn't just taken back a home. I had taken back control. Then the text started. "Kelsey, what are you doing? This isn't you. You're destroying everything we've built as a family. How could you betray your own brother?" My mother, my father, Brandon, they had all decided to play the same old game. Spin the narrative, make me the villain. But this time I had the law on my side. And Chloe, my friend turned legal warrior, was already 3 steps ahead. Chloe's first call was clinical. "We need to serve them. A cease and desist, notice of trust enforcement. I want them to understand legally, irreversibly, they are trespassing." I nodded, feeling a rush I hadn't experienced in years. Not fear, not anger, not helplessness, clarity. Every year I had sacrificed, every dollar I had quietly spent, every late night I had endured, they had underestimated me. And now they were about to learn what happens when the invisible one stops being invisible. By noon, Chloe had drafted the notices. Every detail was precise. My parents were trustees, I was the sole beneficiary, the trust was irrevocable, and they were legally forbidden from selling, transferring, or encumbering the penthouse. The letters were delivered by courier, signed and notarized. There was no way around it. The law would protect what was rightfully mine. And yet the text didn't stop. They escalated in tone, dripping with manipulation, guilt, and entitlement. Brandon called. His voice was smooth, but there was a tremor underneath. "You really think you can take the penthouse from me? From all of us?" I laughed softly. "It's not mine to take. It's mine by law. And by design. By every hour I spent making it what it is today. You're just realizing it now." He sneered. "You're petty, Kelsey. This isn't revenge, it's theft. And Mom and Dad, they're disappointed. They can't believe what you're doing." Disappointed. That word cut deeper than anger ever could. They weren't angry, they were shocked. Shocked that I wasn't bending, that I wasn't begging, that I wasn't absorbing all the blame to maintain their illusion of family harmony. It was at that moment, standing in the empty living room, that I realized the truth. I had spent my entire life carrying the weight of their mistakes, their lies, their greed. I had been the invisible one, the fixer, the silent supporter. And now, for the first time, the scales were about to tip. Chloe and I strategized over every possible move they could make. They could attempt to sell, forge signatures, manipulate the trust, but every legal avenue they might try had already been anticipated. We were ready. I had spent years preparing unknowingly, pouring resources into the very asset they thought they could take from me. 2 days later, My father appeared at the building with Brandon and their entourage of investors. They arrived at the door, confident, entitled, certain that they could reclaim what they had always assumed was theirs. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I simply waited, letting them approach, letting the reality of the empty penthouse settle in their minds. I opened the door. The look on their faces, my father's pale shock, my mother's sudden realization, Brandon's smug arrogance evaporating into panic, was almost satisfying. Behind them, the investors paused, confused by the absence of furniture, appliances, and all the accoutrements they had assumed would seal the deal. "Welcome," I said, my voice calm, sharper than the Chicago wind. "This apartment is off limits. You are trespassing." My mother screamed, my father stammered. Brandon tried to assert dominance, but the legal notices in my hand spoke louder than his arrogance. Chloe stepped forward, handing them the official documents. "This is the Patricia Ellington Trust Enforcement Notice," she said. "You are acting in violation of the law. Cease and desist immediately." For a moment the room froze. They weren't just surprised, they were trapped. They realized that their attempts to manipulate me, to rewrite the family narrative, to steal what was rightfully mine had failed. And it wasn't a battle of words or social influence anymore. It was a battle of law. Brandon finally sputtered, trying to regain control. You can't do this. That's not fair. Mom, Dad, you have to stop her." And my mother's facade cracked. Gone was the matriarch, the manipulator. She looked like a woman stripped of her authority, exposed in front of her family and strangers alike. I stepped closer, holding the letter from my Aunt Patricia, the one that had secured my future, the one that had been my invisible shield. "She knew," I said quietly, almost to myself. "She knew what would happen, and she made sure I'd be protected." My father's hands trembled as he reached for the documents. Brandon stared, silent, realizing that his carefully curated life of entitlement was crumbling. And my mother, the woman who had dictated every interaction in the family, every expectation, every manipulation, had no words left. The penthouse had become a battlefield, but I was no longer the one fighting for validation. I was fighting for justice. For every late night I had worked, for every dollar I had sacrificed, for every moment I had been overlooked, underestimated, and exploited. And the moment of triumph wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, precise, and irreversible. They could scream, they could protest, they could spin stories to the public, but legally, financially, emotionally, they had no leverage. That evening, as the city lights shimmered against the lake, I sat in the empty living room, Chloe by my side, reviewing every move. Brandon's calls went unanswered. My parents' texts were ignored. The social media manipulation they had already begun to craft wouldn't matter. They had no foundation to build it on. I poured a glass of wine, holding it against the backdrop of my empty apartment. This wasn't victory yet. There were more battles ahead. Financial, emotional, reputational. But for the first time, the rules were mine. The narrative was mine. The power was finally mine. And as I gazed at the skyline, I realized the most important truth. I wasn't the black sheep. I wasn't the invisible one. I wasn't the pedestal. I was the heir, the architect of my own destiny, and the woman who had finally stopped being silent. Comment below if you've ever had to reclaim what was rightfully yours. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And if you're enjoying Kelsey's Rise, give it a like, it really helps the channel. The following morning, the penthouse remained silent. The city hummed beyond the windows, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening within. For the first time, the space didn't feel empty, it felt like home again. Mine in every sense that mattered. Chloe and I spent hours reviewing every potential legal loophole. The Patricia Ellington Trust was airtight, but my parents and Brandon weren't going to stop. They were desperate, and desperation was dangerous. Yet with each document I read, with each clause I memorized, I felt a strange calm. They had underestimated me for decades. Now, for the first time, the tables were turning. At precisely noon, my father called. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then I sent a single text. "You no longer have access. Any further communication must be through Chloe." Minutes later, Brandon tried a video call. The screen lit up with his smug, arrogant grin. "Kelsey, we need to talk. You don't understand. This is all family. You're making a mistake." I tilted my phone so he could see the empty